Imagine this, a bolt cutter in hand, the HOA vice president cutting through your property's gate to access a private lake. The HOA thinks they can just take whatever they want, but when Regina Fairbanks made that move, she didn't expect me to fight back. Before I start, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? I knew the second I saw that bolt cutter dangling from her hand that the HOA had finally lost its damn mind. It was just past noon when I heard the snap of metal on metal. I'd been in the garage working on my old fishing kayak when the sound made me freeze. My lake gate, custom built, locked, and marked with a clear no trespassing sign, had just been broken open. When I stepped out, there she was, Regina Fairbanks, 50-some, bleached hair puffed up like a marshmallow, and her floral blouse tucked way too neatly into khakis. She was the vice president of our HOA, and she was halfway through the gate like she owned the place. "Regina," I said, stepping down the porch, "you've got exactly 3 seconds to explain what you think you're doing." She turned around like I was the one trespassing. "Xander Wilcox," she barked, "this lake is part of the community. You can't just gate it off for yourself." "Yes, I can," I said, walking right up to the busted lock hanging from the gate. "This part of the lake is on my property. The HOA map ends 15 feet that way." "You know that," she crossed her arms. "The board voted to reinterpret the property lines. You can't reinterpret a recorded land deed." Regina gave me a tight little laugh like this was a game. "The HOA has authority to regulate shared spaces, and this lake is a shared resource. I'm going for a swim. You can call the board if you have an issue." She took another step past the gate. I whipped out my phone. "Nope, I'm calling the cops." That got her attention. She stopped mid-stride. "You wouldn't dare," she said. "You just committed criminal trespass and property damage." "I absolutely would." I didn't wait for her to respond. I dialed the non-emergency line and explained exactly what happened, who she was, what she did, and that I had security cameras that caught the entire thing. Regina stood there like she was trying to decide if she could outrun the law in loafers. "You're going to regret this," she muttered. I looked at the broken lock. "Yeah, you are." She finally backed off the property, but not before tossing the bolt cutter onto the grass like it had betrayed her. 15 minutes later, Officer Grant pulled up. I showed him the footage clear as day, Regina cutting the lock and stepping through the gate. "This is textbook trespassing," he said, taking notes. "And if the gate's on your property, she had no right to force it open." Regina tried to spin it when he went to her house, said it was a misunderstanding, claimed she was inspecting for safety concerns, but Officer Grant wasn't having it. "She's getting charged," he told me that evening, "and if the HOA was involved in this decision, they'll be answering for that too." Good. They'd been pushing boundaries for months, trying to find me for my mailbox color, harassing my neighbor over his garden gnome, and now this. Regina picked the wrong guy to mess with, and I was just getting started. HOA story, HOA stories, Homie Owners Association stories. By the next morning, half the neighborhood had heard about Regina's stunt. Word traveled fast in Willow Pines, especially when it involved the HOA behaving badly. I woke up to a fresh voicemail from my neighbor 2 doors down, asking if it was true that Regina had been caught red-handed with bolt cutters. I didn't respond. I had bigger things to deal with. I spent the early part of the day at the county recorder's office getting certified copies of my parcel maps, original survey documents, and the title deed, all marked with the county seal. I wanted every inch of my lakefront backed by official documentation. If the HOA wanted to play games with property lines, I was going to bury them in paperwork. Back home, I pulled up the HOA's community charter and bylaws. It was all public, tucked away on their dusty website under an outdated documents tab. I spent a few hours combing through the language, highlighting every relevant clause about common areas, exclusive use, and easement boundaries. There was nothing, absolutely nothing, that gave them authority over privately owned waterfront property. At around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I got a knock on the door. It was Officer Grant again, this time in plain clothes holding a manila folder. "Got a minute?" he asked. I stepped aside and let him in. He opened the folder on my kitchen table. "So I spoke with the assistant district attorney. They're filing misdemeanor criminal trespass and destruction of property charges against Regina. That's not the end of it, though." He slid a sheet toward me. It was a complaint form, this one filed by Regina herself. "She's claiming you threatened her with physical harm." He said, "She filed it about 2 hours after we left yesterday." I stared at the form. It was absurd. "That's complete fabrication." "Yeah," Grant said, "and your security footage proves it. But it's worth noting this is her trying to build a counter-narrative. The DA's office isn't buying it, but you should be prepared for her to escalate things." "Escalate how?" I asked. "She's still on the HOA board, and people like her don't like losing face. I'd expect some retaliation through official HOA channels, petty citations, harassment, maybe even trying to push for a lien if they manufacture enough bogus fines." I nodded slowly. "Then I'll be ready." After Grant left, I installed 2 additional cameras, one pointed at the driveway, the other watching the backyard fence line. I wasn't taking chances. The sun hadn't even set when the first retaliatory move came. A notice from the HOA was taped to my front door. Violation 327B. Unauthorized modification to fence structure. Apparently, the gate lock I'd replaced after Regina cut through the last one was now considered a non-compliant security fixture under some obscure clause buried deep in the HOA's guidelines. I wasn't even surprised. The next day, I attended the monthly HOA meeting held in the community clubhouse. I hadn't gone to one in over a year. The room was packed more than usual. I spotted Regina seated at the front, flanked by the board president, a man named Harold Vance, who wore a blazer 2 sizes too big and looked like he ironed his tie with a waffle maker. As soon as I walked in, the room got quieter. I ignored it, grabbed the last empty seat, and crossed my arms. Harold cleared his throat. "Before we begin, I'd like to address a matter that's been circulating regarding a recent incident involving board member Regina Fairbanks and the access path along the Western Lake boundary." Regina sat upright, her hands folded like a school teacher waiting to scold a class. Harold continued. "After reviewing the situation, the board has determined that the lake, while partially bordering private lots, is considered a shared environmental resource. In the interest of community harmony, we are exercising our right to access and inspect the area as needed." I raised my hand. "That's not how property law works. You can't declare a shared resource just because you want to. The county assessor's office has my lot clearly marked, and I've got the certified documents with me." Regina opened her mouth, but I cut her off. "And before you say anything, Regina, I'd be careful. You're currently facing charges for trespassing and property damage. You're not exactly the model of lawful conduct right now," a few people in the crowd murmured. Some leaned closer, whispering to each other. Harold glared at me. "We're not here to argue legalities," he said. "Then why are you pretending you have jurisdiction over land you don't own?" I asked. He avoided the question. "Let's move on to the next agenda item," but the damage was done. Several residents approached me after the meeting asking about the charges. I didn't give them details, but I told them the truth that the HOA had overstepped, and now it was in the hands of the legal system. That night, I got a call from a woman I'd never met, Tanya Harlow. She lived on the other side of the lake about 6 houses down. "I've had problems with Regina too," she said. "Last year, she tried to fine me for having a compost bin in my yard, said it was a nuisance structure. I fought it, but they still billed me $300 and threatened a lien. I asked if she had kept the documents. She had. I told her to hold on to them. Over the next week, more neighbors came forward, each with their own Regina story. A disabled veteran who'd been fined for having a flagpole slightly taller than regulation height. A young couple who were told their solar panels violated roofline aesthetics. A retired teacher whose backyard fountain was labeled a water waste hazard, even though she used a closed-loop system. I started compiling everything, every citation, every complaint, every instance of abuse of power. By the end of the week, I had a folder 3 inches thick. I dropped it off at the office of a local attorney who specialized in HOA abuse cases. He flipped through it, eyebrows raised. "This is textbook overreach," he said. "And if she's been using her position to target specific individuals, that could open the door to civil liability."